Now we have the team round of the 2014 Math Olympiad school competition. And you will have 20 minutes with 5 teammates to do these 10 problems. Realistically, to place, you really want to get 7 to more realistically 9 to 10. All right. So, what is the least multiple of 12 that is greater than 200? So this is asking you about the rules of divisibility. And you know that 12 is made up of 4 and 3. So the divisibility rules of 4 and 3 are going to come into play for figuring out what number is the smallest number over 200 that 12 goes into. So essentially, you're looking for numbers that when you add up all of the numbers together, you will get a number that is divisible by 3, which is the rules for divisibility of 3. For 4, you're looking for numbers that will, the last 2 digits are divisible by 4. And those are the divisibility rules for 12. That it has to have a number that has a sum of its digits less of 3 that's divisible by 3, and you have to have the last 2 digits that are divisible by 4. So let's take a look at 200. Well, we know 200 can't be divisible by 3 because 2 plus 0, 0 is 2, right? So we know that 201 is divisible by 3, but 201 is not divisible by 4 because 001 is not divisible by 4. So the next thing that's divisible by 3 is going to be 204 because 2 plus 0 plus 4 is 6. 6 is divisible by 3. So then let's look at the last 2 digits, and the last 2 digits are 0, 4. Well, 4 does go into 4. So we know that 204 is the smallest number over 200 that 12 goes into. All right, what is the sum of the prime factors of 105? Now, that's sort of interesting because problem 11 and problem 12 both asked about prime or about factors. Now in here we didn't need prime factors, but we did need to look at the factors. So let's take 50 or 105 in prime factorization. Now clearly 5 goes into this, and 5 goes into 105 21 times. 5 is a prime number. 21 is a composite number. 21 is made up of 3 and 7. 3 and 7 are both prime numbers. So 3 plus 7, because we're looking for the sum, 3 plus 7 is 10, plus 5 is 15. So the sum of the prime factors are 15. Big reveal. All right, the math club has 22 members. Just going to highlight it. Maybe not. Now I'm going to highlight this. And the school band has 26 members, and it has only a total of 41 people. How many have How many people have joined at least one of these activities? Now, the harder question would be how many people have joined the math club or how many people have joined the band. But they're not asking that. They just need to know what is the minimum number of people who have joined both. And so if I take the number of members in both, 22 for the math club, 26 for the band, and really more people in band than math club? You gotta be kidding me. And so if I subtract these, I'm obviously doing it upside down, but you end up getting, you add these to see how many total you have, and so you get 48. And clearly 48 is larger than 41. Well, how much larger? So 48 minus 41 has a difference of 7. So we know that we have 7 people that have to be members of both clubs to make this a true statement. So the answer, in fact, is 7. Actually, let's do this. Get the next 2 problems up. All right. 14. Tony has a total of 34 pennies and nickels. Their total value is 98 cents. How many pennies does she have? Now, it's sort of funny that they asked this because this is a very, very typical algebra question. And so as an algebra teacher, I'm hard-pressed to think of another way of doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'd expect my 8th graders to solve it. And I realize that it's probably not how you'd go about attacking this problem, but if you learn something new, that's great. So we know that we have pennies and nickels. And we have a total of 34 pennies and nickels combined, which means that if I have pennies and I add all of my nickels together, I will have a total of 34 coins. But we also know that a penny is worth 1 cent. So I know that 1 times the number of pennies will give me the value of all my pennies. And I can add to that the fact that every nickel is worth 5 cents. So if I multiply 5 times the number of nickels, I will have my value of nickels. And the total value of the pennies plus the total value of the nickels is going to equal 98. So what I did here is I wrote 2 equations. We call this a system of equations. And I'm going to digress a little bit. If I were to graph these 2 relationships, I would have this equation up here. It would look like this. This equation here would look something, I would wager, like this. And where these 2 lines cross is where you have 34 coins that have a total of 98 cents. So really, we're looking for a coordinate on a coordinate grid. Now, I understand. In 5th grade, you haven't done a whole lot of line graphing. That's the way it goes. And I'm not going to graph this because there's an easier way. I know that pennies and pennies, well, pennies and pennies are the same thing, right? So what if I subtract this whole expression from this expression? And let's see what happens. And I'm going to go way into the negatives. I hope you're okay with negative numbers. So if I have 1 penny and I subtract 1 penny, how many pennies do I have? Well, I have 0 pennies. Well, what's 0 times the number of pennies? That's right, it's a big fat 0. Well, what is a nickel minus 5 nickels? Well, that's negative 4 nickels. What is 34 minus 98? Well, that's going to be 64. Negative 64. Because you can almost read that. So negative 4n is equal to negative 64. And again, how we did this is we noticed that we had 1 penny and 1 penny. And if I subtract 1 penny from a penny, I get no pennies. And so if I'm just subtracting the 2 equations, n minus 5n is negative 4n. 34 minus 98 is negative 64. Well, this means negative 4 times the number of nickels is equal to negative 64. How would I figure out what n is equal to? Well, if I'm multiplying negative 4 times n to get 64, negative 64, I would have to do 64 divided by negative 4 to figure out how many nickels I have. In algebraic writing, I would just say divided by negative 4 divided by negative 4 because the opposite of multiplying negative 4 times n is dividing by negative 4. Now, hopefully you will remember that dividing a negative from a negative is a positive. What is 64 divided by 4? Well, 64 divided by 4 is a grand total of 16. So I must have 16 nickels. But I don't want that. I want to know how many pennies I have. So if I have 16 nickels, and I have 34 total coins, 34 minus 16 nickels is going to give me, well, I can't take 6 from 4, so I have to borrow. That's a 2. So 2 minus 1 is 1. 14 minus 16, well, I hope that's 18. And so I have 18 pennies. I understand that this may not be how you know how to figure out this problem. And I did it a slightly more difficult way because the way I wrote my equations, I ended up going way in the negatives. Incidentally, I could have subtracted this from this, but the way I wrote, I just went ahead. But that's one way of doing it. All right, I'm going to do number 15. Stop. Make a new video for the next one. All right. Every digit in a 100-digit number is a 7. So that means I have a number that goes on essentially forever, and all the numbers are 7s. And what is the remainder if I divide it by 12? So let's divide it by 12. Well, how many times does 12 go into 7? Well, it doesn't, right? How many times does 12 go into 77? Well, 12 goes into 77 6 times. So I'll repeat that 0. And 6 times 12 is going to be 72. And I subtract it, and I will get a remainder of 5. Now I'm going to do the remainders in red. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to bring this up because I think I'm going to need a lot more room. All right, so then my next step is bring down the 7. How many times does 12 go into 7? 12 goes into 7, oh, I don't know. How many times? Well, it's not 6, or it can't be 5, because that would be 60, so it has to be 4. 4 times 12 is 48, and I subtract them, and what number do I get? I'm going to get a remainder of 9. Well, let's keep going. We haven't gotten to any part that repeats, so I'm stuck with just going. How many times does 12 go into 97? Well, I think it goes in 8 times. So 8 times 2 is 16, carry the 1, so that's 96. Oh my goodness, and now we get a remainder of 1. Well, we have 5, 9, and 1. So then I have to continue. Bring it down, I have a 7. So 12 goes into 17 ones. I mean, it's fairly obvious. So we have 12, and then I get a remainder of 5 again. Oh, I'm repeating. So I'm going to continue having remainders of 5, 9, and 1, and they're going to keep repeating. So I will have a total of 3 different possible answers. Now, obviously, guessing at this point with 3 possible answers really helps because you've narrowed it down from 10 possible remainder or 11 possible remainders. But there's like a party going on outside his school at like 8 o'clock at night. It's kind of funny. All right, so if I have 100 sevens, and I know that I have 3 possible answers, how many times does 3 go into 100? And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to figure out, based on the remainder of this, which remainder of these 3 it's going to be. So 3 goes into 100, or 10 3 times. There's 9. Carry the 1. This goes in 3 times. And so I have a remainder of 1. Well, now we need to figure out which one of these will give numbers will give us a remainder of 1. So, well, for this 5, I had 2 numbers, right? 2 divided by 3 possible options gave me a remainder of 2. When I want blue here. When I have 3 numbers being divided with 3 possible answers, 3 divided by 3, well, that's a remainder of 0 right here. When I had 4 numbers, 4 divided by 3 is going to give me a remainder of 1. 100 has a remainder of 1. So we know with absolute certainty that our final remainder for this problem will be a 1. Watch the next video for the next group of 5.